Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand. I am your host, Greg McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal branding and business development company. I want to take you on a journey that takes another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal story, business conversations, and tips to improve your personal brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand podcast series, you will be able to differentiate yourself from the competition and allow you to build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build trust, and reflect who you are. Developing your 5-star personal brand is a great way to demonstrate your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh, spelled M-C-G-A-U-G-H, at 5-star BDM, B for brand, D for development, M for masters.com. Now let's begin with our next 5-star episode on Follow the Brand. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Follow the Brand podcast. I am your host, Greg McGaugh, and I would like to share a question for one of our listeners. Why personalize your brand for career development? I will let my guest, Greg Monaco, answer that question. In this episode, he asks whether you relate to your job from a perspective of personal mission with a clear goal to solve a problem for others. You get excited by your ideas by telling your story as an individual. A personal brand lives with you forever and is powered by the source of your idea, the truth of who you are. Get in touch with your power source, lead with your truth, and captivate others with your story when you are fueled by your passion and the dramatic episodes in your own life. Greg Monaco is a brand and story coach who sees himself as a lone wolf, an independent thinker, a unique creator. He has run his own business for the past 20 years as an entrepreneur, brand strategist, and writer, and helped big thinkers go bigger. As a brand and story coach, he helps people tell magnetic stories so they attract the work that they love. He works with authors, entrepreneurs, executives, and artists to refine their voices, build their presence, and attract dream opportunities. Through his online network, Fearless Brands, he is helping people in their pursuit of getting paid to do the work they love. If we do the work we love, we have more love to give. That's his simple philosophy. Previously, he was a founding partner of Monaco Lane, an independent global brand consultancy, and was a senior copywriter at Ogilvy, helping tell stories for clients like Girl Scouts of the USA, American Express, AT&T Wireless, SAP, and IBM, to name a few. You can see his ideas on entrepreneur.com, Advertising Age, and Human Resources Executive. He also hosts branding and storytelling courses and workshops. Beyond branding, he has also enjoyed many pursuits as an architectural photographer, professional soccer player, and filmmaker. He lives in Connecticut with his wife, Jill, and his 3 children, Aiden, Cameron, and Kylie. Let's welcome Greg Monaco to the Follow the Brand podcast, where we are building a 5-star brand that you can follow. Thank you, everyone. This is another great session, and I'm going to enjoy this session. We're on Follow the Brand here. I am your host, Greg McGaugh. And today, you won't believe this, but I've got an individual who has been doing personal branding for a number of years as an entrepreneur. And we're going to find out more about his own story. We're going to flip the script on what he does. He's going to tell me about his personal brand. He does this for a living, helping others to find their voice, to get clarity about their sales or their business, whether it's career management, business management. But he has been doing this as a master. I call him a master of his craft. So I want to bring him up. His name is Greg Monaco. He lives out in Connecticut. And I right now might be a little jealous. I'm down here still sweltering heat in Miami, Florida. But I know he's enjoying. This is his time up there in the New England area where there's beautiful weather. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Greg Monaco.
Hey, Grant. I'm sorry to hear that you're jealous of our weather up here, but you're going to be smoking us in about 3 months down south. So that jealousy is going to the tables will turn.
It will. It will. We know that's why we get our snowbirds. They come down here. But if anyone here has ever been to New England, please, this is the time to go right after the summer stops. It's beautiful. The leaves, the foliage, you really get a good feeling of fall, all the different poems, everything you've ever written or known about New England and what it looks like is right there in front of you. And now we've got Greg Monaco sitting there in that beautiful paradise to tell us about. And so we're going to start out with this question. Why did you get into personal branding?
I felt a need to help people in a very particular way. I ran my own brand consultancy out of New York City for 12 years. And I had many people come through the doors that had a great idea and needed help in telling the story. And they really couldn't work with my agency. My agency, it was an expensive endeavor, and these folks were entrepreneurs. And so I found myself helping them anyway. So come meet me after hours, and I just got so much joy out of working with the individual. There's something about people expressing themselves and getting excited about their ideas that you just don't get when you're doing corporate branding, which is more about aligning leadership around an idea. Now, you could get excited about that, but there's a lot of personalities to corral. But when you're working with individuals, it's sort of magical, where you're just kind of working with the source. You're doing a little bit of storytelling that's based on the truth of who they are. And when that happens, there's just some real magic.
Man, and I think about magic, and I think about these. There's difference between branding and then marketing, and then people that are actually bigger than their brand. Think of Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs was bigger than Apple. Bill Gates, bigger than Microsoft. You've got now the new ones with Bezos, and you've got Elon Musk. You've always had Oprah's. These are personal brands that have just exploded beyond their own product and service. They actually need them more than the business. And it needs just their employees, so I like that fact. Can you expand on that? What's the difference between branding and marketing, and that personal branding, and then just corporate branding? Because there's definitely a disconnect.
Well, a personal brand lives with you forever. Corporate brand, by definition, it's limited. The average lifespan of an organization, I believe now, is about 18 years. Back in the 50s and 60s, 1950s, 1960s, that was around 60 years. So organizations are coming and going faster than ever. But with a personal brand, it's part of you throughout. No matter what actually the vocation doesn't matter quite as much. I think that people that you were mentioning there, like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, Oprah specifically, Oprah is someone who's living her truth. She's living. I don't think that she, even though there were a lot of, it seemed like the universe conspired to build her. And not that she didn't work hard, but it was like amazing timing for her to build her brand the way she built it. But that truth, that inner truth of who she was was all within her. I mean, if you know anything about Oprah and her backstory, she was not dealt a great hand from an upbringing standpoint. And, like her life was just, she had to kind of like dig herself out. But she's made a stand from the very beginnings of her career to live life with more soul. And that's how everything that she's doing is really revolves around that. Steve Jobs is the same way. I mean, this guy just had a very determined voice about who he was and what mattered to him. And he kind of followed that. So that's really, personal branding is something that's just part of you. And I think a lot of us just forget what that part of us really is.
And the way you just framed that, just your thought process there. Because what I have found as I talk to different individuals, people that are in their careers, people that are looking to be entrepreneurs, or they are entrepreneurs, it's that initial beginning, the framing of the story. Who am I in the story of my own life? What is my role? What is my character? How do others truly see my character? And how do I see my character? And is there a disconnect? Or am I just letting this story play out without any intentionality? I'm not infusing my character with any kind of characteristics that I want to have, that I think I have, but I'm not telling that story with clarity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's a lot of people are just lost. And as we move further and further along in our career path, we tend to layer our skills and experiences and accolades on top of our truth. And when, especially later career, you get used to a lifestyle, then I like to call it the truck of compromise. You pull up the truck of compromise because you don't want to lose what you have. So the strongest brands really have an ability to peel back all these layers and are connected to their power source. This may sound a little woo-woo and spiritual here, but that's really the truth of it. And I think those powerful brands like Steve Jobs, like Oprah, are really in touch with their power source, and they become a magnet for opportunity. So it's almost like the world conspires for their benefit because they're very clear on what they're doing. They may not have done a personal branding process to reveal that, but I think a lot of us get lost because, we're so involved in what we're creating for others or the job title we want to get. And that's what starts to cloud our vision.
Oh, you said it, and appreciate how you talked about an individual as they go through life. I call it almost a coma of habits. You just get into this coma of habits, and that you're just used to, telling people what you do and where you work and where you live, but you really haven't told your story. You haven't told, well, why are you doing that? What is your passion? What is your passion? And then when you really tune into somebody's passion, what I have found when I touch that button, man, they go off. They know it, but they've never, no one's ever really asked me why I like, look, for my instance, personal branding. You know what I like? I love telling other people's stories. I love to give them the opportunity to tell their story, because there's so much more to an individual than what you're going to see on a resume, you're going to see on a CV, you're going to see even on a LinkedIn profile, especially if they haven't been intentional about it. You can only put so much, but you've got to lean in to that story and understand that you're not just this 9 to 5 individual who goes home, possibly in a single life or a family structure, And then you go through these routines and it becomes very, very, very routine. And you haven't taken that leap of faith just to be yourself. And then is that self something I can sustain? Can I monetize that self? Is that something I can actually do and make money at and sustain my lifestyle? What are your thoughts around that?
I love the last point that you're talking about there, Grant, with monetizing. I mean, you're sitting on gold right now. Most people don't realize that they're sitting on gold. And because of the current context or this coma of habits, I love that phrase, that if you are not being led by your truth, you're really missing out on captivating and inspiring people with your passion. You're going to light up. And when you light up, you become a magnet. And you're going to magnetize yourself in a way that will bring opportunity right in front of you. And I'll just tell you a quick personal story. I worked with a business coach probably about a little over a decade ago. And I remember literally walking down 6th Avenue with him, and we were having a conversation. And I said, you know what I am? I'm a brand coach. I coach people. And he's like, wow, that's really interesting. And I put that on the back burner for over 10 years because I was building my consultancy, and I was in this habit of building something, and I literally just kind of tamped down that part of me down for years. And now it's bubbled. I mean, the truth is going to come out at some point. Hopefully it's not too late,
Right.
Because it takes time for you to build a business out of it. If you're going to pivot in some way, it's not like overnight, boom, it's going to happen. You've got to play around with the idea. You got to prototype ideas, and then things will start to come to life for you.
I'm glad you said that, because what I find is that people, when they finally make that choice, I want to do something with this skill that I have. I found a way that I can either save people time, I can save them money, or I can help them make money, or I can bring this new skill, to a marketplace that needs it, right? Like for me, it was bringing my Fortune 500 experience to small to mid-sized businesses as well as entrepreneurs to give them those gaps that they need. So you don't want to look like a mom and pop. You want to look like a Fortune 500 company. You want to look very professional, because you are. And when you're dealing with a Fortune 500 company, you're dealing with an individual. They just have the trapping around them. So they've told their story at such a high level that the trust factor, becomes very, very high. And you want to be able to have that as well. You don't want to start out with a low trust factor. You're going to have to build toward that. But of course, you've got to be authentic in what it is that you're doing. So when people make that decision, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I've had to make that decision. I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'm going to put my all into this. They need to understand the journey forward. They're starting at the bottom of that hill. They see the goal to a certain degree. Maybe it's not very clear. They got that North Star, let's say, but do they really truly know that journey? Right? How do you get to the top of that Mount Everest? Is that something you want to elaborate on?
Well, I've been on this journey for a couple of years in earnest. And I look back even just at some of the things that I was doing and saying even just a year ago, and I cringe with embarrassment. It's like, oh my God, really? That's where I was? So when you are fueled by something you're really passionate about, you'll make progress very quickly. And honestly, it's like any athlete, you are fueled by, the love of the game. And you can do that in business, fueled by the love of the game. And athletes talk about just getting 1% better every day. yeah, that's what it is. It's inching towards something. And, you said it, Grant, about being authentic, but also being aspirational, like knowing that you have a gap between where you want to be and where you are now. Well, what does it mean for you to be, where you see yourself? And can you be that right now, in your shoes right now? It may not be the glossiest way. You may not have it all together, but it's better than the alternative of not doing anything.
I agree with that. Now, I want to know about your personal brand. Do you have courses? Is it a process? How do you take somebody who's on that journey? What are you doing to help somebody with their personal brand?
I've got a course called Relaunch You, and it's an 8-week experience it's a self-guided video-based course that I coach. I also coach as well, along with a cohort, a group, a community. So that's like my magnum opus. That's like the big feature product that I have. I also do one-on-one coaching, and I also have a community of brand builders called Fearless Brands. And this community it's a year old, and it was just a prototype. And I just was trying to think from someone else, my client's perspective, about what they really need to develop a personal brand. And what they need is support, because this stuff is mysterious. Brand development didn't take me years. It took me decades to understand it. It's slippery stuff. So this environment that I've created, this community, Fearless Brands, is meant to have everybody come together in a safe space so we can prototype ideas, work with one another, network, meet each other, and build our brands together. And I'm in it with them.
Now, I want to talk about that slippery slope. I love how you said that, because you look at brands, and just in the corporate brands, and sometimes they seem to be cyclical. Sometimes they slip and just fall into something great. And sometimes they think they've got the greatest thing that's ever been, and it fails miserably. You've got all these other channels. You've got so many ways for an individual to consume information. So many different things. How do you capture attention? I've heard from someone, they said, you've got 7 to 8 seconds to make an impression on somebody. 7 to 8 seconds. And in those 7 to 8 seconds, you've got to say something that stops the scrolling. Stop scrolling. and they still them down for a minute in order for them to even tune in to your rest of your story. I think in advertising, you see that. I think they call it I think what's the term, is it an anecdote or something like that. It's that first sentence that is so compelling that you actually set down mentally in your mind. I'm going to stop doing whatever I was doing. I'm going to listen to, at least I'm going to give this person another maybe 30 seconds. So then you've got another 30 seconds. And hopefully you build it up to a couple of minutes. And if you're a show, you got 30 minutes. I'm hoping someone is still listening to our show right now. I think you will be. Tell us about that, because that's a process that you have to go through in order to gain attention. This episode is brought to you by 5-Star BDM. 5-Star BDM is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for small to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement in operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our 5-Star Business and Personal Branding Company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. The result is more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Please visit www.5 5starbdm.com to learn more and view all the episodes of Follow the Brand.
I think it's really understanding who matters to you and how you can be helpful to them. It's not about you. It's not about your job title. It's about the people you're helping and what they're missing if you're not there in their life. And what they're missing is really a solution to their problem. So if you can really identify with the people who matter to you and their pain points, you're going to be building a bridge because you're relating to them where they are right now. And I think that's the mistake a lot of us make, is when we're so wrapped up in how great we are and the kinds of awards we've gotten and our skills and all of our experiences. That's not a story. That's just a resume. That's just a timeline. That's just a list, So yeah, that's one thing, to stop someone from scrolling is to relate to them where it matters. And that's not mass appeal. That's like getting very, very specific about the people that you're trying to help.
Yes, that you're saying something that's impactful and you're coming from the heart. And I think people can relate to that because you've got so much critical information around you all the time. What I mean by that, it's just negative. It's just something's always going in a direction that typically is not a direction that you want to go into, that you're part of this mass of media that's taking place, but it's not specific to you and really about you and your family and your goals and the people that you're trying to help. One thing I found is that especially when it comes to personal branding, is that you see that in the corporate world. What's the first thing that happens? New executive comes on board, right? Of a pretty substantial company. And then what happens? They do a write-up on them. There'll be an article or they'll put out a company blurb about this individual, just like what you said. Here's a list of their accolades. Here's, a little timeline of what they've done. And then how they're going to be a great asset to the company. And we can't wait for him to come on board. And that's what happens, right? And even like most people, you don't even get that. You join the company, there's no write-up, typically. There's no article. What you probably did to get the job, you probably interviewed with a couple of different individuals in HR, and then your hiring manager. You showed them your CV and your resume. You probably did a video, or you went in person, and you were able to tell your story to that one individual, and that was it, right? And then you went on about your business, right? But what happens next? What happens when? I think the average now, that you kind of alluded to it, 3 to 4 years down the line, you no longer work for that company. So you became a fit for their brand. You became a part of their brand. They looked at you like, does this person fit my brand? Oh, they do. We're going to have you. You're going to be a part of my world and my brand, and you're going to do what we do in this particular company. But when you're separated from that company, and the titles don't matter hardly anymore, and the accolades and whatnot, what is your story?
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about just being a cog in the machine, where you fit the organization from a technical standpoint, but really there's nothing there. And how they introduce you is based on what you've done. And it's not based on what really matters to you and what kind of change you're going to bring to the organization, or what mission you have, or what you're really good at. And I think a lot of, particularly executives, have a hard time picking something because there's so much experience they have.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying that you need to just pick one thing and that's it. I mean, I think that's the conundrum, is that a lot of executives have such a wealth of experience that they become generalists, and then their story gets generic. Well, what is it that lights you up? How are you contributing to others in a way that's special? And if you can tell a story from that perspective, and I've got something called a one-line story that helps people crystallize it in one line. But if you can come from that perspective, that's certainly a lot more memorable than the fact that you worked at, whatever organization for 10 years and then, just go down the list of your timeline.
Exactly. Like I said, once that timeline is up, then you're like, am I expired?
Yeah.
Like you said, I think earlier in this podcast, you talked about that, as far as, a brand might be around for, I don't know, a number of years, but on average, let's just say the average lifetime is 70 years. What is your story? What have you been doing for these, up to these years? There is a definite story there, and people gravitate to stories, good stories. They stop and listen to a good, well-stated story, a personal story that has intrigue, that has challenges. We all have challenges, and then it has some type of, heroic moments. What did you do? How did you get through that? And I've noticed in my lifetime, as I go back in time, and I was in some challenging moments in my life, and I got through them. And as I look back at that, and I'm like, that's a story. That's a story. At the time I was going through it, it probably wasn't the story I wanted to tell, but I didn't know how it was going to end, right? So that creates uncertainty. It creates anxiety. It creates doubt and fear, right? Because you don't really know. But what I have found now as I go through life, that I go back to some of these episodes in my earlier life and like, what? I didn't know how these things were going to turn out then, and they turned out okay. And I look at what I was doing and how I managed to move through the different episodes in my life to attract the right people, to open a new door to a new experience. And it worked out. And I have found that when I'm utilizing my personal brand, so when I tap someone on the shoulder and they already know something about me, the time it takes to now move past that particular problem that I'm having is a lot quicker. It's a lot quicker. I found that being intentional about telling my story at a high level, very professional level, has definitely changed my life. And I wish I'd known that 10, 15 years ago, but I do know it now. And I'm knowing it even more and more as I expand my circle. And I really, truly love that. And that's why I'm into personal branding, because I truly believe other people need to get that. It's about perspective. And when you have that right perspective, it can help you no matter at what point in the journey that you're on.
Well, you said a lot of great things there, Grant. And I just want to amplify one thing that you said is when you have clarity and focus around an idea, your truth, your own perspective of yourself, you can actually start to build in branding, we call it a brand system. You can start to organize information that helps to amplify what that core idea is. And those are your experiences. So you don't serve up your experiences as I worked at X company for 10 years. You serve up your experiences through stories. Here's what happened in this organization that I worked in for 10 years. Let me share this with you, this anecdote. Because those are interesting. That's when you have the dramatic tension. That's when you've got a problem being solved in an interesting way and punchlines, and you could be funny and engaging and start to inspire emotion in others. But you have to be clear about what's the point? What am I trying to get across? I like to say that I help people tell magnetic stories so they can do the work they love. And I literally have a stack of 3x5 index cards that have stories from my past that amplify that idea, that one-line story for myself. And it's a simple trick, but if you can get to that one-line story for yourself, you can start to develop a system around it.
Well, and you're exactly right. And I know we're coming to the end of our episode today. And before we leave, I want the audience to, and I always give my guests, give my guest, which is yourself, an opportunity to talk to my network. This is the 5-Star BDM network. We've got a lot, and a lot of my network is full of health professionals. A lot of them are health professionals. A lot of them are career people. A lot of them are also entrepreneurs in this world. And healthcare is obviously a huge, huge field. And we start looking at mental health as a part of that. But I want you to give you the mic, give you an opportunity, speak to my audience, let them know why personal branding you feel is an important endeavor for them.
Well, you've got a choice. You can be branded or you can brand. You can tell a story or have others fill in the blanks of the story. So if you don't have clarity about who you are, well, others are going to start to fill those gaps for you. So it's important to investigate who you are, what matters to you, and who matters to you, because that's going to lay the runway for your career and, quite honestly, your life. I mean, this is something that the lines between work and life are totally blurred now. So, and to be honest, I mean, this is where when people talk about life's work, this is where you can get clear about that. You have an opportunity. So, you can, the choice is actually quite binary. Either step into it and explore it, or let others do the work for you. And you might get lucky.
Yeah, that's true. But you want to get more than luck. You want to be intentional and walk in your own world and walk in your own truth. And people do love it when you show up and you shine, because you know who you are and what you're about. I think that's very important. So if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
The best way is email. I'm obsessed with email. So it's a good way to reach out. It's Greg, Greg, at letsgomonaco.com. LETSGOMONACO.
And that's the same as your website address that I saw.
Letsgomonaco.com. Absolutely.
Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful episode. And I truly appreciate you coming on the show. And just, we're just hacking it out here, talking about personal branding, why it's important. I'm sure that anyone listening to this podcast will get some gems, some nuggets of wisdom out of this, and take that next step. You've got to take the next step. I link on my website. I've got an online questionnaire. It helps to begin to frame a story. It begins that journey that you can do some self-reflection. And from there, you can begin to make some important decisions for yourself. So take a look at that at www.5starbdm.com. That's B for brand, D for development, and for masters. And until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure.